Good morning. I want to thank everybody for being here for our press conference that we have each Wednesday after our Tuesday council meetings. I wanted to remind the citizens of a few things. One thing I did not mention last night that I'm very excited about and am going to be promoting quite a bit in the coming days is our Columbus Mayor's Youth Council. This is open to students 9th through 12th grade in any of the schools within the city limits. And that also includes, there are some areas within the city that are actually in the county, but they can attend the public schools, the city schools, and those students would also be eligible. We have recently put a form on our website that I encourage people to go to. You can also pick up a copy of the application here at City Hall. And we're really looking forward to having a good group of young people join the Mayor's Youth Council. Because of COVID over the last couple of years, the council hasn't been as active as it has in the past. We're also going to try some new things this year with the council. I would really like to get, it's critical in my view that we hear from our youth when we're working on public policy for the city. So I hope to have this new group engaged in those opportunities. We're asking when individuals fill out the form to participate. There's a questionnaire there. We're encouraging students to maintain a 3.0 to be able to participate. We're also asking them for a letter of reference from a non-related individual. I'm going to try to go into the schools in the coming days as school begins again to really promote this within the city. And the council will meet twice a month starting in October. We're planning to take applications at this point until the end of August with an announcement of the council members in early September. There have been several individuals that are helping pull this together, and I appreciate their assistance. Judah Bennett has been working on this for several months, trying to help us pull this together. Also, Emily Liner with Friendly City Books is going to be helping with our meetings and our topics as we go through the year, programming and that type of thing. There have been some other folks from across the city who are very interested in working with this youth council. So I'm very excited about getting this kicked off in the very near future. Last night at the council meeting, we had a couple of proclamations that we read. One was honoring Reverend Joe Lee Peoples with Stephen Chapel here in Columbus. We recognized him for his service, his 50 years working with Stephen Chapel and the many accomplishments that congregation has had throughout our city. And we also declared this coming Thursday as Odie Owl Day for the mascot of MUW, celebrating the city's long history with the university and all that stands for our community. So those were two things we recognized last night. We also, our fire department, recognized some partners within the community who have been very supportive of the fire department. We also recognized, and if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you go back and look at the video. We had some really cute kids that we recognized from our parks baseball programs that have been very successful this year. And we want to continue to grow those programs at Probst Park and recognize the volunteer coaches who work so hard with them, and then the parents and the children who come out and participate in the sporting activities there. There were several topics that we brought up last night with the council. One was dealing with our upcoming budget process, which we have been busy working on since the latter part of May. It is a process that starts primarily in late May and then working throughout June, July to prepare the budget, and then we began bringing it to the public in August meetings. We will send out the specific dates in the very near future. Council members are welcome at any time at City Hall to discuss the budget. That's always been the case. Last year we had 2 public meetings on the budget because we really would like to get citizen input too. I want to thank our new CFO, Jim Brigham, who's been doing yeoman's work to get things in order in our finance office. I can't say enough good things about how hard he's been working. Our new COO, Jamie Garrett, has also been working very hard with the departments to prepare a budget that I think will be something that our citizens can be proud of and can help move our city forward. So I always want to thank Jim and Jamie for their very hard work on this, and encourage anybody that has questions about the budget to please reach out at any time, and to know that there will be opportunities for the council members to give serious input on the budgeting process, and also our citizens. And so with that, I'm going to invite Jim up and kind of go over some of the things he announced last night, the recent visit to City Hall by the IRS, to clarify any questions that anyone has on that, and just kind of give us an overview of what's been going on in finance. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Last night I updated the City Council on a number of issues. One of them being a visit from the Internal Revenue Service. The city, like everyone else, pays taxes and on certain items, and there was some back issues that had not been cleared up going back as far as 2017, and the revenue agent kind of visited us by surprise, but that was welcome because there's a good chance to get those issues resolved and be able to move forward with a clean slate with them. We did debate. I mean, there were, I think, a total of 7 items. 2 of those were penalties from 2020 and 2021, and we were able to work with the IRS agent and get those abated. That saved the city about $15,000 between the 2 of them. We were able to prove that, as a matter of fact, the city did comply with the Internal Revenue Service code for those 2. We did have 1 large outstanding fine. That came out of 2017, where we failed to, on a timely basis, report to the Social Security Administration both the 1099s and the W-2s. And that there had been an attempt by previous staff members to get that abated. But in talking with the Internal Revenue agent, I believe that I'll be able to write a more thorough letter on why that happened, and hopefully we can get them to reconsider their denial of that abatement. But $40,000 is a lot of money for the city, and we're going to fight for it if we can get it back. We talked about the budget and where we're at on the budget and moving forward with that. And I think those were probably the key things that we talked about. And let me make sure I'm not taking any of your, I'm taking your notes.
That's okay.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for Jim?
Yes.
Sure.
Several. We can alternate. You're good? All right. So, Jim, question 1. What is there, as far as paying that $40,000, you paid that, what's the protocol as far as needing any sort of board approval, or because this was an outstanding debt to the IRS, is there something in the city charter that allows the COO to take action on something like this without any sort of need to go through any sort of process? How does that play out?
Yeah, typically if we have a situation where we have to pay money out and it can't go through the normal docket process, we have a process called check write, which allows us to go ahead and pay it and then bring it to the attention of the city council at the next meeting. And we'll actually put this on the docket to be formally approved, but I wanted to make them aware of it last night. The IRS agent was not going to leave without collecting what was due to the city, or from the city.
So just so I have it clear, this check write is what it's called?
Yes,
So,
check and then WRI.
Gotcha, so it allows you to pay any sort of fine and then bring it before the city council retroactively.
Right, yeah. It's a process that, I mean, we have emergency payments every once in a while that we need to make, and this one certainly was not scheduled, so.
Any other questions for Jim?
I've got a couple more. So, you mentioned the phrase, like timely fashion, something like that.
Right.
What does that mean? What did the IRS agent explain what timely fashion meant?
So when you have at the end of the year, when you prepare the 1099s or the W-2s for the employees, there's a deadline that they have to be reported to the federal government. And if you don't meet that deadline, just like if a employer doesn't get the W-2s to their employees on time, there's a fine for that. And apparently in 2017, and I have to do more research on what caused that issue, but in 2017, we did not meet those deadlines, and that's what resulted in the fine.
Now, are you aware as far as, because this happened, I would imagine there's an initial fine for missing the deadline in 2017 plus a series of late fees. Do you have that breakdown as far as what the fine itself is and what is?
Yeah, the initial fine was $36,572.70, and the interest was $3,508.90.
Total coming out to 39?
Just
roughly?
right about 40,000
Right about 40.
for that particular item, yeah.
And where did that 40, that roughly 40,000, did that just come out of the normal?
It'll come out of the general fund, and we'll make sure that it's accounted for. And I have to check to see if the previous financial people had actually booked a liability to the IRS, since they were aware of it. I suspect they hadn't, but I want to make sure that if they had, that I take care of that and account for it properly.
So when did because that's what, like, it's 5 years, right? Did the IRS agents say when they were first made aware of this, this infraction?
Well, I would guess the IRS was made aware of it. You know, they run a year or two behind in lag in their investigations, but I'm going to guess that they were aware of it by 2019. I do know that the staff that was here in 2020 was aware of it, since the first letter asking for them to forgive the fine was written in 2020 and was denied by the IRS.
So you said, going off that, you said you believe the previous administration did take steps to try and respond to the IRS, which is behind why you say you believe there could be an abatement. What kind of steps did the previous city employees take in response to this, other than that letter you mentioned?
They just wrote a letter and tried to explain why it happened. Unfortunately, their explanation was mainly blaming the CFO that was later charged with embezzlement, rather than really dealing with why the deadline wasn't met, since just because a CFO is stealing from you doesn't mean he doesn't meet IRS deadlines and stuff. So I have to do more research on why that didn't happen, but their first letter asking for forgiveness really blamed it on the previous CFO. And you know, there's probably a better technical letter that I can write to try to explain to them how it happened and why it happened. And you know, the revenue agent seemed to think that if it was an effective letter, that we have a pretty good chance of getting it abated.
So is there anything you can tell me about the letter you're gonna write as far as what you're gonna cite for your explanation to try and get this roughly 40K back?
Not yet, since I need to do more research on why it was missed in the first place. I want to be technically correct when I write that letter to the IRS.
And then that 2020 letter you mentioned, did it basically say that for Milton, that said that, hey, this was his fault as far as he just made a mistake, or did it claim any sort of, connection to his criminal activities?
No, it didn't claim any connection with the criminal activities. It simply blamed him and then went into some detail on his criminal activities, which was irrelevant to this particular situation since it really didn't. The fact that he committed an embezzlement really doesn't relate to why we didn't make a deadline with the IRS. But that was the excuse that they used in the letter, and I think that that's probably why the IRS denied the request in the first time.
Did the IRS agent tell you what any sort of penalty they would levy against the city if you guys failed to pay?
Yes, there would have been a tax lien against the city.
I've got the rough kind of definition of that as far as almost like, it's kind of like collateral, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if they would have done a tax lien on our equipment or our property or whatever. I'm not quite sure about that. That's probably better answered by Jeff, but there's no way we want
It's
it.
not a good idea to fool around with the IRS.
Right. We have the funds, and we made sure that the money that we paid was correct based on the proof that we were able to find. And, I'm just glad that we were able to save $15,000 for the city because we could prove the IRS made a couple of mistakes. So,
what were the issues with that, those two infractions that you were able to get them to dismiss?
both of those infractions were where we failed to file 941 tax deposits, which is withholding tax deposits in a timely manner. So you're allowed a certain amount of business days after you do your payroll to make your payroll taxes. I don't know that we are big enough to be a 3-day, but there's a deadline that we have to make, and normally, and the way we operate today is we pay those payroll taxes the same day we pay the payroll. But why that didn't happen back in 2020 and 2021, I don't know. But we were able to actually prove that we were within the time frame allowed by the IRS to make those deposits, and that's why they have forgiven those two.
Do you know at all, the IRS agent mentioned if there were any, audits of former employees involved with this, that 40K?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, this was purely dealing with the city of Columbus and no individuals.
Jim, I know I talked to you when you first took over, and you knew there was a tall task ahead of you as far as getting things financially sound in the city, and this goes back to 2017. Is this kind of just, what was your reaction when you kind of first got that visit from the IRS agent? Is this kind of what you've been bracing for when you first joined? I mean, how does this hit you as far as
I'm up for the challenge. You know what? The city deserves better than they've gotten in the past. And, we'll work very hard to get all of our accounts up to date, our audits up to date. We're just finishing up the 2020 audit, and hopefully we're starting the 2021 already, even overlapping. So, we'll get this squared away. The city, the citizens of this city deserve better, and we're going to make sure that they get it.
That's all my questions.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
Jim, Mayor, would you be able to just quickly speak on that? Really just that last piece, that kind of reactionary as far as just,
Sure. No, I'm not surprised that we had a visit from the IRS. It's unfortunate, but I think we've been very clear for quite some time that there were some major issues that the city's been facing financially for several years. And some of it is just now coming to light. Some of it we've been very much aware of. We have to be good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars. And you're asking Jim a lot of questions about, the processes of how he made the payments and dealt with the IRS. When the IRS shows up at City Hall, just as if they showed up to your house, you don't fool around. I think Jim handled it exactly right. I agree with him wholeheartedly that the city has deserved better than what they've gotten from our financial area. That's not a slight or a negative comment on anybody else. It's just pure fact. And I can't tell you how hard he has been working since he got here to try to get all these things cleared up. There's a reason he has the degrees that he has and all the certifications that he has. And I think he deserves due respect for everything that he's trying to accomplish. It is yeoman's work. If you're not up there on a daily basis seeing what he's dealing with and the others on the team up there, then you have no way of understanding completely. So that's why I've encouraged the council last night to please stop by and sit in on some of the work if they would like, to see where we're, all the good things he's doing and how we're getting the city back on track. When you're dealing with as many issues as we've been dealing with, it doesn't happen overnight. I know many people get impatient with certain projects and things going on, but if you're going to do it correctly, you have to make sure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's, and that's what he's doing, and I commend him for it, and am thankful every day that he's here working with us.
You mentioned understanding the issue. Is this situation with the IRS, is this kind of, to you, encapsulate or kind of really highlight, hey, here's the scope of the issue that we're dealing with as far as city finances go, or was this even for you, did this kind of add to the frustration as far as feels like you keep taking a couple steps forward every time you try to take it, or a couple steps back every time you take a step forward?
Well, I mean, again, when you're dealing with areas of city finances, it's, municipalities, the finances of a municipality are complex. There's a lot of different funds that you're dealing with. You're dealing not only with local funds, you're dealing with state funds, you're dealing with federal funds, you can also be dealing with donations. And if you don't have a team that's staying on top of those things and doing it accurately, this is what you find yourself in. But I think the takeaway from this is that we are in a very good position to move forward. I think the city is in a better position right now from a financial standpoint than we've been in quite some time because of the professionals we have working in those areas. Again, I've been here a year. I'm not surprised by anything anymore. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that, there's a lot going on within the city. There are a lot of citizens who are frustrated and want answers. And I think that's what the council and I need to do. We need to be about being professional about these issues. If we've got concerns or questions, we need to come up and visit with me and the CFO about those things. I think everybody on the council wants what's best for the city, and so we should be working together as a team to try to move the city forward. Now, we also had some excitement in the executive session, and I will call up our city attorney to talk about executive session.
Thank you, Mayor. So before I get to that, if I may, not to argue with the CFO in any way, but to sort of supplement what he said. The mayor and city council only act and speak through their minutes, but in a case like this, we have this fine with interest growing. It wouldn't have been prudent to let the interest continue to grow on something that's overdue already. So, as he said, the council, I would expect to unanimously ratify that expenditure when it's put on the claims docket. The better practice is to approve things on the front end, because hypothetically they could vote against it and then we'd have a problem. But in this case, I fully support the decision to go ahead and pay it immediately.
As to the executive session, we had one matter of pending litigation related to the bridge, where we discussed strategy and took no action. I was just bringing them up to speed with additional things that had happened in the litigation. And then we had...
Can you talk about any of that?
No, that's why we do it in executive session. And then we had 3 matters of personnel, 2 related to individuals in the police department. One employee of the police department that was voted to be hired in the prior meeting, the 2 weeks before. We have learned some things from her other employer where she was leaving that led the council and the mayor to rethink their idea of hiring that employee, and they rescinded the action to bring the employee on due to conduct occurring at her previous employment, which did not comport with the standards we have in the police department. The second item in the police department was the mayor and city council voted on a 4-3 vote to suspend a police officer for 30 days and require the officer to pay back 4 days worth of hours worked for which she could not prove overtime was authorized by her shift supervisor. And then on the final item, they considered a matter of personnel in the administrative department and took no action.
So that suspension you just mentioned, that's just because of unapproved overtime, is that correct?
The working without being clocked in without actually working.
Gotcha. Are you able to give any more detail on that first instance you just brought up about the officer you were, or the CPD employee you were going to bring in? Any kind of details you can give?
I don't think it's a good idea for us to get into too much detail. It was somebody that never served a day for us, and hopefully that person will find employment somewhere else. We don't need to add to our problems.
Is this just going to be a uniformed officer, or can you even say?
Would have been a uniformed officer, yes, sir.
On the overtime issue, how many hours were in question?
Well, it depends on which side of the case that you're looking at it from. The city had numerous hours over 14, 15 days, 12 or 13 days. The officer appeared through her counsel, and the argument was that there was a lot fewer days than that, but I think it was generally agreed there were some problems with the clocking in and not working. So I don't know where it'll go. It may be there will be an appeal, and if there is, it'll all become public, but that's the best I can tell you right now.
So about, you said about 14 to 15 days were in question?
I think it was 12, actually.
12, okay.
Yeah.
And then you said she had to pay back 4 days worth?
I'm not sure if it's a full 4 days, but there were 4 instances where there was overtime due her that she received, but that the shift supervisor had not signed off approving. So some of the time the officer served were split shifts, so I can't tell you exactly how many hours that's going to add up to.
We can find out. And what was the recommendation that came before the council for discipline? Was she recommended to be fired, or was she recommended to be suspended, or what?
The recommendation from the chief was for termination.
And can you, to the greatest extent that you can, either you or the mayor, speak to why the council suspended instead of firing?
I'll take the hot seat off of the city attorney. The recommendation from the police chief was to terminate this individual. As Jeff pointed out, this person did hire counsel, and they were at the executive session meeting. After listening to both sides of the argument from the police department and from her attorney, the council then debated on whether to give a 10-day suspension or a 30-day suspension Both of those suspensions would have had the payment, as he mentioned earlier, and on a 4-3 vote, decided to do the 30-day suspension.
Can you say who voted yes and who voted no?
Yes. Well, I don't know that I know for sure. It was we had there was a recommendation for the 10-day suspension, and then we had a substitute motion for 30 days, and it was a tie vote to do the 30-day, and I broke the tie to do the 30-day instead of the 10.
And can you tell me who the votes were? Who voted yes and no?
I'll have to go back and look for sure. I know that Councilwoman DeChico made the motion, Councilwoman Stewart seconded it. Obviously, they voted positive for it, and there was one other, and then 3.
I think Councilman Jones voted with them, but I'm not sure about that either.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that either, but we can double check. And then there were 3 against it who were preferring the 10-day, I'm assuming. And then I broke the tie to give the 30-day. But we can find out on that third vote. I just can't remember who it was.
And what was the consensus, or what were your feelings since you voted that way to go with the suspension instead of the termination?
Well, there seems to be some question about how this is being handled within the police department consistently, as far as overtime and that type of thing. So there were some real concerns of me and the council. I'm concerned, as is the council, about how this is being handled in the police department. So there was obviously some real concern and wanting to see improvements in this area.
When you say there was concern as to how it was handled, you mean like some people were being suspended, but some people were being fired, and you were trying to be consistent?
Well, I think this is the first person that's come up on this particular charge. Is it this year, or since I've been here?
We had one in the past that clocked in and drove to Moorhead and back.
Was that during my time?
Prior administration.
Prior administration. What we heard last night was that, that there are some within the department who believe that this is not an unusual practice. It's not more than one person doing it. We have no proof of that at this time, but there seems to be a consensus with some that we have had officers taking advantage of clocking in for overtime and then not working. So we are doing a review of that to try to find out what's going on with the police in this particular area, and our policies in place for this, and to make sure that officers have a due process before anything like this happens. Is that correct?
Yes.
And can you, how many days is that effectively? Because I know police don't work, a 5-day work week or whatever. So the 30 days, that comes out to longer than 30 calendar days, does it not?
Probably, yes. And we need to get that from HR to be sure.
They work a 12-hour shift, so it'll be substantially more than 30 days. Probably 2 or 3 months.
And that was suspension without pay?
Yes.
Yes.
Anything else? That's all I got, Mayor.
Nobody else? All right. Thank you very much.